Hello, wonderful friends. Welcome to Bible Stories in Pictures, where the Word of God comes alive through powerful storytelling and captivating visuals. Today, we journey back to the days of Egypt, where God's people faced bondage, witnessed His mighty hand, and experienced the greatest deliverance in history. Get ready to relive the miracles, the plagues, and the unforgettable crossing of the Red Sea. This is more than just history, it's the story of God's power, His faithfulness, and His unstoppable plan to save His people. The book of Exodus is traditionally attributed to Moses, the leader chosen by God to deliver Israel from Egypt. He was not just a witness to the events, it was his own life, from the basket on the Nile to the mountaintop of Sinai, that intertwined with every miracle, judgment, and divine revelation. Many scholars believe Moses recorded these events under God's inspiration, making Exodus not just a history, but a living testimony of God's power and covenant. Most conservative scholars date its writing to around 1446 to 1406 BC, if following an early Exodus view, or 13th century BC, if following a later date theory. Either way, it was written in a time when empires rose and fell on the Nile's banks, when Israel's story could have been lost forever, had God not intervened. Beneath the burning Egyptian sun, the cries of a weary people rise above the clanging of hammers and the thud of bricks. Whips crack. Dust swirls. The chains of oppression seem unbreakable. Generations have known nothing but labor, their dreams buried under Pharaoh's commands. Yet in the shadows of this cruelty, a divine plan stirs. A child once hidden in a basket will grow into the leader of a nation. The God who hears every groan and counts every tear is ready to unleash His power. Centuries will look back on this moment as the dawn of a new era. Through plagues that defy the idols of Egypt, through a night painted with the blood of lambs, through waters that rise like walls and crash like judgment, the impossible becomes reality. Exodus is not merely a record of history, it is the heartbeat of deliverance. It is the moment when a scattered people become a chosen nation, bound to the God who rescues, commands, and dwells among them. Freedom is no longer a dream, it is a covenant sealed in the wilderness, a promise that echoes through time. In this episode, we shall be delving into the hidden stories in chapters 1 to 14 of the book of Exodus. A new king ruled over Egypt, and he was filled with fear. The Israelites had grown too many, too strong. What if they joined enemies in war? So the Egyptians turned them into slaves. Whips cracked through the air. Children cried as their fathers staggered under heavy bricks. Work never ended. But even under chains, the Israelites kept growing. So Pharaoh gave a cruel command: every baby boy born to the Israelites was to be thrown into the Nile. Mothers wept. Fear gripped every home. Egypt became a land of sorrow. In the middle of darkness, a baby was born. His mother saw how special he was and hid him for 3 months. But the soldiers were everywhere. So she placed him in a basket, sealed it tight, and gently set it on the river. His sister followed from a distance. Soon, footsteps approached. Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe. She saw the basket, heard a cry, and opened it. There lay the baby, alive, beautiful. She chose to raise him as her own. And just like that, the enemy's house became a shelter for Israel's future deliverer. Moses grew up, but after defending a Hebrew, he fled Egypt and became a shepherd. One day, while tending sheep, he saw something strange, a bush on fire that didn't burn up. As he stepped closer, the ground felt holy. A mission waited. Egypt still cried, and the time had come. But Moses doubted. He didn't feel strong or brave. Yet he was chosen. In his hand, a shepherd's staff would become a tool of power. His voice, though weak, would soon challenge a king. Moses left Midian with his family, carrying a calling greater than fear. On the journey, he nearly lost his life, but mercy covered him. As he neared Egypt, his brother Aaron came to meet him. Together they gathered the elders of Israel. When the people heard they weren't forgotten, tears flowed. Hope began to flicker. Slavery still chained them, but change had begun. In the grand palace, Moses and Aaron stood before Pharaoh. They delivered a message with boldness. But Pharaoh's eyes narrowed. Instead of mercy, he ordered the people to work harder. No more straw, yet the same number of bricks. The people groaned. They turned against Moses. Doubt crept in. Had they come to help or to make things worse? It seemed deliverance had failed. In the quiet of despair, a promise rose again. The God of their fathers had not forgotten. Chains would break. Egypt's grip would shatter. The people didn't believe easily. Pain made their ears dull. But the plan of heaven was moving, steady, strong, and unstoppable. Back before Pharaoh, Aaron dropped his staff. It turned into a serpent. Pharaoh's magicians did the same. But then something amazing happened. Aaron's serpent swallowed theirs. A silent warning filled the room. But Pharaoh's heart refused to bend. A storm of plagues stood waiting. Moses lifted his hand over the Nile. Suddenly, the waters turned to blood. Fish floated lifeless. The river stank. People dug for clean water but found none. The land was quiet, shocked. But Pharaoh remained proud. The river of life had become a river of death, and it was only the beginning. As dawn broke, frogs burst from the waters. They hopped through the streets, into beds, into ovens, and even Pharaoh's palace. Egypt was crawling with them. People screamed, tripped, and begged. Then the frogs died. The land stank again. But as the air cleared, Pharaoh's heart hardened. Dust rose in the wind, then turned into gnats. Tiny, biting, buzzing creatures filled the air. People slapped their skin, swatted the air, and hid in corners. Even the magicians gave up. They whispered in fear that something divine was happening. Still, Pharaoh would not listen. Next came flies, thick, dark, endless swarms. Egypt's skies blackened. Buzzing filled every space. Yet in Goshen, where the Israelites lived, there was peace. Pharaoh noticed. But still, pride won over mercy. Then the animals began to fall. Horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, all dead. Egypt's wealth and strength lay in the dust. But none of the Israelites' animals died. Pharaoh sent men to check. They saw the truth. But Pharaoh's heart turned colder. Ash was tossed into the air, and painful boils broke out on the people and animals of Egypt. Even the magicians couldn't stand before Moses, their skin covered in sores. Still, the king clenched his fists. He would not yield. The sky darkened. Thunder shook the land. Then came hail, fierce, icy, mixed with fire. Trees shattered. Crops were crushed. Homes collapsed. Only Goshen was safe. Fear crept into Pharaoh's voice. He almost gave in. But the storm passed, and he changed his mind. The locusts arrived like an army. Wings roared like wind. They ate every green leaf, every blade of grass, every fruit on the tree. Egypt was stripped bare. Pharaoh begged. Then lied again. His heart was stone. Darkness fell, a darkness so thick, no one moved. For 3 days, Egypt was frozen in fear. But in Goshen, light remained. Pharaoh was furious. He shouted, then warned Moses never to return. The final plague was near. A silent warning swept the land. That night, every home without lamb's blood on its doorpost faced death. At midnight, a cry rose, the loudest Egypt had ever heard. From Pharaoh's palace to servant huts, every firstborn died. But in Israelite homes, there was peace. The blood had protected them. The Passover began that night, a celebration of life, rescue, and a God who saves. Pharaoh sent them away in the middle of the night. After 430 years in Egypt, Israel marched out, with silver, gold, and freedom. The people were finally leaving. God's mighty hand had broken Egypt's pride. A new journey had begun. As they walked away from Egypt, God gave them new instructions. Every firstborn would belong to him. They would eat unleavened bread each year to remember how they left Egypt in haste. These reminders were not just rituals, they were proof of God's faithfulness. Suddenly, Pharaoh changed his mind. His army chased the Israelites. The people panicked as they reached the Red Sea, no escape ahead, no mercy behind. Then the sea split. Walls of water stood tall. Israel crossed on dry ground. When Pharaoh's army followed, the sea closed. Chariots sank. Silence returned. On the other side, the people stood free, not just from slavery, but from fear. Lessons to learn from the story. 1. God hears and remembers his people, no matter how long the wait, his promises never fail. 2. Your weakness does not limit God's power. Moses felt unqualified, yet God used him mightily. 3. God's timing is perfect, even when it seems late, his plan is right on schedule. 4. Obedience opens the way to miracles. The Israelites' act of applying the lamb's blood saved their lives. 5. God protects his own. While plagues fell on Egypt, Israel was kept safe in Goshen. 5. Deliverance is complete. God doesn't just free us, he removes the enemy's power to enslave us again. 6. Remember your testimony. The Passover and unleavened bread remind us never to forget God's rescue. 7. Faith can part the sea. When you trust God, he can make a way where there seems to be no way. From the pain of slavery to the joy of freedom, the story of Exodus Part 1 shows us that God is not just a God of promises but a God of action. He fights for his people, overcomes every enemy, and keeps every word he has spoken. The same God who split the sea for Israel is still moving mountains and opening impossible paths today. If he could deliver a whole nation from the strongest empire of the time, he can surely deliver you. If you've been blessed by this story, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, drop a comment sharing your favorite part of the Exodus story, share it with friends and family so they can be encouraged too, and subscribe to Bible Stories in Pictures so you never miss another inspiring Bible journey. Till we come your way again, remain blessed. Expect Part 2 with the title, Into the Wilderness, an exciting continuation of the journey from the shores of the Red Sea to the sacred heights of Mount Sinai. From Exodus chapters 15 to 24 theme, provision, testing, and covenant. From the triumphant song of celebration at the Red Sea to the refreshing miracle at Marah, from heavenly manna and quail to water gushing from a rock. Witness God's mighty provision in the wilderness. Stand in awe as the Israelites defeat the Amalekites, hear the wise counsel of Jethro, and arrive at Mount Sinai where the heavens thunder with God's voice. Experience the awe of receiving the 10 Commandments, the depth of God's covenant, and the powerful moment when the covenant is sealed with blood. See you in Part 2. Bye.